welcome to the Science Faction Podcast, where science meets fact meets fiction.
This is Science Faction for the week of November 3rd, 2024. I'm one of your hosts, Stephen Dominguez, and with me today on this glorious, glorious Sunday, hopefully with a cup of coffee or tea or whatever Devon drinks in front of them, are my co-hosts.
Benjamin Daniel Wallace is definitely drinking tea.
Devon Craft. I'm actually drinking Dr. Pepper Zero.
Oh.
Even though I've been off. I was off all soda for a while, like a couple of years, and then
What happened?
I creeped back in.
The creeping death.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what they should just call soda nowadays. The creeping death. I think
Creeping death.
that's a good name.
If there was, Devon, if there was this anything called creeping death, would you consume it?
I mean, it depends on what it is, but sure.
All right, that tracks. That sounds good. Hey guys, we just look. We played a role playing game, and I want to talk about it real quick. So I've been pushing for this since 2013. I wrote this RPG a long time ago, set to be system agnostic, and we actually played it, and I thought it was fun. What did you guys think?
That was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thank you for bearing with me as I was just completely wiped out from this wild week.
Yeah. No,
I don't think
yeah,
I brought my best to it. But
when I'm like, and then the evil vampire, and you're like, I'm like, okay. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. It was a lot of fun, but because of how busy things have been lately, we did have to kind of squeeze it in and only played for a couple hours, which is fine. It's a good start. But yeah, Ben, tell us about how tired you are and why.
oh my gosh. Okay.
I mean, not all of it,
Yeah,
just the fun parts.
Just the fun parts. Well, actually, so you mentioned that you started writing this up in 2013. That's really cool. Like it's 11 years old at this point. When you were writing it up, did you have us in mind as your players?
No.
Oh.
I had 0 people in mind. At the time, I was just like exercising my writing brain, and I had this idea of like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have a role-playing game where every session was like an episode of TV, and the heroes, the player characters, the PCs have to go and investigate some weird thing that's going on, and maybe it's something supernatural, maybe it's not, and that was my idea. I wrote 5 sessions out, and then never played. And so now we're diving into that, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and like from my perspective, the idea here is it's like it's like Men in Black for like a fantasy universe.
1,000%, yes.
Yeah. And so like that was a hook that really got me, and I appreciate that. Like that sort of universe just feels like a really fun playground to be in.
Oh, you have no idea.
I do.
Just how fun it can be. Yeah, so that's pretty neat. I'm excited to play more when we have time. Yeah.
Right on. So recently, an interesting thing that's happened, and I'm not going to get into all the reasons why I've been tired this week, but I'm curious just to ask y'all, how long do your computers last? Like the ones that you use as your daily drivers to get stuff done,
So my answer to that is a ship of Theseus, because when a component breaks, it gets replaced.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the computer I have now Is it the same computer I had 10 years ago? Part of it is. Part of it is not.
For sure.
So that's an answer from someone who builds their own PCs. If you have an Apple product, I don't know what the answer is.
Oh yeah. How about you, Devin? I know you're a little bit more on the laptop side of things.
Yeah, so I've, for the past, since I've had my current job, which has been since 2010, have just used, they didn't give me a laptop right away because they didn't do that until maybe 2014 or 15. Anyway,
it took them a while to trust you with technology.
Well, no, they just... It used to be that we just had our computers at our desk and we would take the physical paper file to court with us.
With your hands?
What?
Like a baby's toy?
Yeah. And then when we went digital, they gave everybody laptops, because that's the only way we could access the files. But so I've been using my firm's computers or laptops since then. Even now, the laptop I use is what they've provided me. And I just use that for most things because it's just easy because it's already set up how I like it.
Yeah.
Like even now I'm using Skype on that computer. I have another computer which I bought just over a year ago for gaming. It's but I don't use it that much. Like if I'm just going to jump on my computer to do, anything, I'm going to open my work computer and do it on there. And so I only use that other computer when I'm gaming or doing music, which I haven't done in a while. So it's just kind of just sitting there.
Interesting. Yeah, because
I have had to replace my work computer maybe once or twice. They've had to send me a new one. I don't remember the why. I think the last time was...
Would you say like 4 or 5 years maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What's the issue with your computer? Why do you...
Well, okay, so like around these parts, like I have to have a much larger separation of concerns, right? Because my work stuff, well, for work I have 2 different laptops because one was provided by my client, one was provided by my work, and so that's kind of fascinating. And then I have my personal laptop, which I use for making books and for recording podcasts and like my life. I am so fortunate that I have all this stuff. And so I do not check my personal email on any of my work computers, that sort of thing. Well, we're in this interesting part right now where, okay, usually I do the hand-me-down thing. Whenever I need a new computer, then my old computer gets handed down to Nicole, and then and Flint's now part of that too, which is pretty fun. But what happens when Nicole needs a new computer? That's yeah. So that's kind of got me.
The simple answer is you just buy her a new computer, right?
No.
Oh, no.
No. There's no simple answer. You don't simply walk into Isengard.
One does not simply buy a computer. It must be purchased for the eldest male in the house, and then his must be passed down to the weakling female.
Well, remove the weakling part because that would be swapped with the weakling male and the strong female in our particular household. But
yeah. I hear you.
Yeah. So right now, what's happened is that the old 2016 MacBook Pro that I handed down to Nicole several years ago, 3 years ago, it's now something's wrong with it, and the monitor on it does not work. So it's now always tethered to a monitor and isn't working very great. That way.
Yeah.
But this is the time when she's getting way more involved in being on the board of the Junior Roller Derby, maybe trying to go back to school to increase her skills and get new certifications in vet tech stuff as well. And so she really needs a mobile computer.
Yeah, geez.
right? In a way that she hasn't yet before 2 or 3 months ago. So, on top of that, this week, Apple announced a bunch of new Macintosh computers, which is not something that they do very often. And I'm now in this state where I'm going, well, do I get a new MacBook Pro for myself, hand down the one that I have right now that's about 3 years old? Or I'm actually thinking about trying out a Mac Mini and seeing how that goes, because honestly, I don't need the portability right now with how I do things as much. And you can buy about 3 similarly spec'd Mac Minis to one MacBook Pro.
What is a Mac Mini? I don't know what that is. That like their version of a desktop or what?
Yeah, it's a 5-inch by 5-inch by 1.5-inch tall miniature computer.
Okay.
That runs their system on a chip that has, especially since in the last couple of years, the performance to price on it has been outstanding and phenomenal. And in fact, the computer I spent like $2,500 on 3 years ago, like a similarly spec'd Mac Mini that doesn't have the screen or the keyboard or the any of that stuff, it's just the computer, is about $700.
Well, buy 2 of those and tape them together, and you got a stew going, man.
So that's what I think is going to start happening. But like that idea of like how long should a computer last? My first MacBook Pro that I got was in 2009. I had that until 2016, when I upgraded to the one that Nicole's now having problems with. And that 2016 one, that lasted 4 years now. I'm sorry, 8 years now. And yeah, like it's super cool when a lot of other technology lasts maybe like 3 or 4 years, I
think it's less of a question of how long should it last. It's how long can it last.
Right.
Because if you're taking care of it and just running it through its normal day-to-day things, it should last what, like 10 years probably, somewhere around there.
Do PCs? I mean, PCs don't really, right? Like,
well, I don't know. See, because Apple has a whole different ecosystem where they're like, here's a thing that you buy. You can't change it. You can't upgrade it. It is what it is, and it's going to last you until we give you the better one.
True.
Right? Until the better one is available. That's a whole different thing from like, here's a bunch of parts, put together what you want. Like, then it lasts until you overclock it and it explodes. Like, they are different beasts, 1,000%. So how long should it last? It depends on how well you take care of it. How long can it last? That's up to the components, right? How long can a transistor accept electrical current until it blows? I don't know. Depends on all kinds of stuff, probably humidity and lightning storms and who knows what else. But what I find interesting is this division between laptops and desktops. I have never been a laptop person. I've never understood them. They've always seemed incredibly inferior to me. Like the idea of mobility at the expense of reliability.
Like top of the line, and top of the line hardware. Like,
to me personally, not worth it. I've never been in a work type scenario where I need to take a computer around. When I was in an office job, we had big towers because we're doing drawings and stuff, and you do that at a desk. You don't go out in the field and draw. No, you do it in the office. So that the whole idea of look how cool this is, and you can take it around with you. I've been like, what? And drop it and break it? Like, that's dumb. Like, just leave it on the table, idiot. Like, but that's a whole different scenario. That's comparing apples and oranges, or apples and PCs, I guess.
I suppose. Well, and it's funny because like now, I guess the reasons why I had it before, and forgive me, this is all about like productivity podcast. It's a different podcast, but like that idea that like, I can be mobile. I can head over to a client's house or to a meeting at a coffee shop, and I can easily set up and like with I don't need a power supply. I don't need any of that stuff. We're just ready to go wherever I go.
If that's what you need for your business, for your work, whatever you're working on. I mean, that's awesome that's available.
However, the pandemic changed that.
It did. The pandemic said, "Stay home, dummy."
Yeah. And so like that idea of having like these pieces that all come together and, you know, like, I mean, I love multi-monitor setups. There's a lot of different things that I love about both sides of the coin. And right now I'm kind of excited about trying out a Mac Mini and seeing if the perceived how can I put it? The guardrails that are in place by not having a mobile workstation, whether or not that's actually a boon in certain ways, you know?
Yes, I've got multiple monitors connected to it's a Microsoft Surface.
Oh, cool.
So it's connected to a docking station that's connected to two monitors. So I have the monitor from the laptop itself plus two big monitors above it. So I got 3 monitors from a laptop, and it runs fine.
Yep.
Of course, I'm not doing any gaming on it. I'm not doing anything that requires anything extra. So it runs just fine.
I'm all about the extra, but yeah, agreed. And that's sort of the thing that I've been like, well, okay, well then what will the monitor setup be like when one of the computers doesn't just come with one, you know? So I'm kind of, I'm excited about it. But I'm also like not looking forward to spending money on it right now.
Well, yeah, money's always an issue, isn't it?
Yeah. Just when you have a elderly cat, a geriatric cat that's going through a lot, it's kind of like, man, this is not a great time for me. Thanks, but
all of us that got our first pets in our 20s are now going, oh, bummer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we need to kind of move along here.
Sure thing.
I mean, you did have this other thing about vampires and stuff that sounds interesting.
Oh man!
So you've been playing on this Pico thing that you've been talking about, right?
Yeah. There's a game on here. It's called High Stakes, and here's the basic premise of it. You're in Las Vegas. It's 2024, and vampires have stolen all of your blood, but they've given you just a little bit back, and now you're playing a card game to win your blood back.
Now that's the kind of vampire apocalypse I can get behind, a gambling kind.
Right. So this game, and I've been playing it on my phone and on my Steam Deck a bit. But if you're playing on the phone, you can play through a web browser, through Safari or whatever. And the entire idea behind this game is it's a 9-card solitaire game that it's kind of a mix of blackjack and a few other different games that all come together where you're using hints that the system provides to try to find out which of the 9 cards is the vampire card. That, you know, the rest of the cards are just 2 through 9. So then the vampire is the highest ranking card. It's going to be the 10. And then your hints consist of finding out like what cards are higher or lower rank than the cards you know. And you have 5 rounds to to earn some of the milliliters of blood back. And yeah, it's really like it is a good game all around. It's one of those that if it were not just a Pico 8 game, I think it would be pretty popular too. But the fact that it is a Pico 8 game is just like, oh, this is nice.
You sent me a link and I was able to play it just through a browser on my phone, and it came up as like looking like a Game Boy looking thing. With like buttons and on your touch. And yeah, it was fun. It was a fun game. We can put a link, right?
Oh yeah.
In our show notes. So if this sounds fun and you want to check it out, there's a link in our show notes to tap at it and try to win some blood back.
And yeah, definitely I recommend if you start playing it and you don't quite understand what's going on, there isn't a lot of in-game tutelage. It may be helpful to read the opening, like the first page that shows up from our link, because it'll kind of give you a little bit more information about what each thing does.
Great. Fantastic. Beautiful. This is a podcast about science and science fiction. Wake up, sheeple. Let's talk some science and some science fiction. I definitely want to hear from Devon because according to what he's written here, we're about to be challenged with our understanding of the universe. Tell me, Devon, how goes it?
Okay, well, this is This Week in Space. The article I'm using for this is from Science Alert. It says, a giant structure in space challenges our understanding of the universe.
Whoa. What?
Yeah, so this isn't like any kind of artificially made structure that could point to aliens. This is a organization of galaxies. It's a colossal structure in the distant universe, is defying understanding of how the universe evolved. And so this is from 6.9 billion light years away. So it's also from 6.9 billion years in the past. And this structure, like I said, it's a circular organization of galaxies. It's 1.3 billion light years in diameter. It's called the Big Ring, and it's actually in the part of the sky that's also near something else that's called, I believe, the Big Arc, which was also discovered, called the Giant Arc, which was discovered by the same team. The first, called the Giant Arc, is actually in the same part of the sky at the same distance away. When the Arc's discovery was announced in 2021, it puzzled astronomers. The Big Ring, which is the new thing, only deepens the mystery.
Whoa.
So according to the, let's see, this is from the scientist who was part of the group that discovered this. They say Lopez. I'm trying to get their full name. Alexia Lopez of the University of Central Lancashire. Their findings are presented at the 243rd meeting of the American Astronomical Society in January, and then it was published in the Journal of Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics. So Lopez said, neither of these two ultra-large structures is easy to explain in our current understanding of the universe, and their ultra-large sizes, distinctive shapes, and cosmological proximity must surely be telling us something important, but what exactly? They referenced something called a baryon acoustic oscillation, which is abbreviated BAO. They're giant circular arrangements of galaxies found all through space. They're actually spheres, the fossils of acoustic waves that propagated through the early universe and then froze when space became so diffuse, acoustic waves could no longer travel. So basically, when the universe was much smaller, just after the Big Bang, there are certain things that could happen that could create structures in the universe that matter would kind of tend to stick around because of gravity. And so when those structures got increased in size because of expansion of space, that's where matter could be found. So there's some logic to why we would see these structures. But the point of that is there's the, I believe it's the cosmological principle. Yeah, later it says the cosmological principle. Anything like that we should see everywhere in space because it should be kind of randomly distributed through space, and then as the universe expands, it should be everywhere. So we should see these things everywhere. But we see cosmologists calculate the current theoretical size limit of structures to be 1.2 billion light years, yet both of these structures are much larger. The giant arc is almost 3 times bigger, and the big ring circumference is comparable to the giant arc's length. So pretty much this is something that we only see in this one part of space. If we search more, maybe we'll see things like this. But also, whatever math we get from the acoustic oscillations would only produce things that are 1.2 billion light years big, not this, which is much bigger.
Yeah.
Although it's funny, it says 1.3 billion light years in diameter, so that's not that much bigger than 1.2 billion light years. But
Devon, I think you forget how big a billion is. I mean, when you put the numbers like that, it seems like they're very close, but I mean, a fraction of a billion is still humongous.
Yeah, true.
That's all.
So,
that's all I'm saying. One
possible explanation are cosmic strings. So under one such model, Roger Penrose's conformal cyclic cosmology. Sorry, this is not cosmic strings. This is something different. In which the universe goes through endless Big Bang expansion cycles, ring structures are expected. Although it's worth noting that this the conformal cyclic cosmology has significant problems of its own. So this is one thing you would expect to see if that was correct, but there are probably many other reasons that theory probably falls apart. And then another possibility is cosmic strings, which are topological defect in the fabric of space-time. These are thought to be like proton-wide wrinkles that emerge in the early universe as space-time stretches, then froze into place. We've not found much physical evidence of cosmic strings, but the theoretical evidence is pretty promising. So at the moment, nobody knows for sure what the Big Ring or the giant arc signify. They could just be chance arrangements of galaxies, although that seems unlikely. The best hope would be to find more such arrangements of galaxies scattered throughout the universe, hiding in plain sight. Then the scientist Lopez says, from current cosmological theories, we didn't think structures on this scale were possible. We could expect maybe one exceedingly large structure in all our observable universe, yet the Big Ring and the giant arc are two huge structures and are even cosmological neighbors, which is extraordinarily fascinating.
So these things are so big. Like, is it possible that we are part of one of these structures and we wouldn't know it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we could probably see arrangements of whatever. If we're part of one of these, we would be able to map other galaxies around us, which we've done, and then just figure out if we were part of something like that. So I think we could probably figure that out if we were. I mean, we're part of we've mapped our local group of galaxies,
right,
like a supercluster. So we could pretty much know what the arrangement of the galaxies are within our general area of the universe. And so we could probably from that already tell if we were part of something that looked out of place.
Of course, these structures were nearly 7 billion years ago. So in the last 7 billion years, maybe our structures have fallen away and dispersed into what we have now.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know how they can tell the general motion, the relative motion of these galaxies if they're too far away and to be able to really tell their general motion, but probably in some extent you can tell their motion.
Isn't it insane that the farther we look away from us, the further back in time we go? That's crazy to me.
It is super cool. I think that also it's wild just thinking about the fact that, like, if we were not here right now, would we notice this? You know?
If we weren't here, would we notice this?
Well, okay, so I mean, like, okay, the shape is not a circle, it's a corkscrew, right?
Yeah.
But like,
from a different perspective.
From a different perspective. Right.
Okay.
I thought you meant if humans didn't exist. I'm like, well, if it didn't exist, I find it hard that we would notice anything.
I meant like if we existed, but we were in a different part of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
The ability for us to distinguish this pattern would be harder, right? Like it would.
Right. Well, so I think maybe the next leap in logic of what you're saying is perhaps we're not seeing more of these because we're not in the right position to.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well,
Right.
it's talking about the further away we look, the further back in time we look, is interesting because how much of the current universe can we not see? Like the vast majority of it. Because everything we look out in space, the further we look, the further in the past we look. So there's so much of the universe that's in our current, relativity, but has expanded beyond our ability to observe it, that we don't even know what the current universe looks like. I mean, we can assume based on our knowledge of physics and modeling where things would go based on what we can see and what they would look like now. But that means that the vast majority of the universe is something we can't observe directly, ever, really.
Look, if Jesus wanted us to know what the universe looked like, he would have told us.
Yeah, he would have written it down in the Bible.
Exactly.
He
wrote the Bible.
wasn't an astronomer.
That's how it works. Jesus wrote the Bible.
I don't know, Devon, maybe. And Ben, how do you know he wasn't an astronomer? I mean, there was a star in the sky that the people followed.
Yeah, the little baby astronomer Jesus. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's obviously an ancient alien. He built the pyramids. All right. That's I'm here to make everybody mad today. That's interesting, Devon. What do you think, man? What do you think about all this? Does this mean anything? These giant structures? Yeah.
I think it just means that we don't fully understand the universe and cosmology, because this kind of goes along with other things where we see supermassive black holes in the distant past, and it doesn't seem like they would have had time to develop based on our understanding of how black holes function. So it's just they're awesome mysteries that keep showing us that while most of our observations fit our current model of the universe, there's plenty more we have to discover. And the whole thing, like things like this, they don't throw out our understanding of the universe. They just mean we still have to refine it and modify it based on new evidence. And how much more stuff is there that we can't observe that would throw our understanding of the universe into some new perspective? It's all very interesting, cool stuff. To get more back to the religious part of it, there's two aspects. There's when newspapers report things like this and other recent observations that have been made by the James Webb Telescope to say our new discovery disproves the Big Bang. It's no, the new discovery doesn't fit our current model of exactly how the Big Bang worked. That doesn't mean it disproves it. It just means the model doesn't account for everything, and now we have new observations and we have to reevaluate it. But there's a mountain of evidence that supports the Big Bang. It's not like one thing that doesn't comport with it is going to overturn it. It just means that there's something that we need to modify, and that's fine. There's also the argument of, well, we don't know, or because I watch a lot of skeptic call-in shows and atheist call-in shows on YouTube, and one of the main arguments they like to bring is well, you're an atheist, and do you know how the universe began or how the universe works? And it's well, no, we don't have to prove beyond to a certainty how it works, and we don't even have to know anything about how it works. Saying we don't know is an accurate answer and does not prove the existence of a higher power.
You don't know that. You shut up, dummy.
Well, I think
there are some really bad arguments made by theists where they're one really bad one was well, if someone knocks on your door, do you just assume it was random chance, or do you think someone was there? And it's well, the universe began, so don't you assume someone had to start it? It's no, those are completely different things. And I've actually heard that argument, and that's by someone who's actually like a following, puts out videos to try to convince people that atheists are wrong. And it's just,
The big knock.
Yeah.
I think that like one of the challenges with my life that I found is that it is better to remain curious. It is so much better to recognize that you don't know the answers to things, and that a perpetual state of learning is kind of the way you should go, and to take in all the information that you can get and be open to the change that comes with learning new information, having that challenge your understanding of things.
Yeah.
Right. So like all of this friction that's happening because people know what happened, that Pluto was the 9th planet and that really matters, or that like all or that the Earth is flat and I know it. Like it's completely and utterly preventing you from thoroughly engaging with and enjoying the universe around you when you know something. Why not be curious?
There's a Netflix show called Emily's Wonder Lab by a wonderful scientist named Emily Cardinelli, something like that. She's actually one of her dreams just came true, and she's going to become a commercial astronaut.
Oh, cool.
But the tagline of the show is "Stay curious and keep exploring." Yeah. Which is like such a wonderful statement that kind of wraps up what you're saying, Ben. Like, yeah, it's better to stay curious and to keep exploring than to stay, with your head in the mud saying, nope, I already know what it is. You don't.
Yeah. Like you're whatever little bit of comfort you get from that lie could be so totally like engulfed by the joy of discovery, right? And of challenging your preconceptions and of understanding and being able to work together to come to a better understanding of things. Not necessarily the understanding of things, but a better one. And just being open to that. Like how cool would society be if that were what was going on?
Talking about society at large, just to mention, this is the last weekend before the election.
Yeah, and
this will come out the day
most
after
of our listeners.
The election, which we might not know the results by the time this comes out.
True.
There's a better chance that because of states having gone through the last election and counting early votes and mail-in votes, they might do it a bit quicker, and hopefully we'll have an answer on election night. But that's coming up, and that's I've talked a lot about it on this show, and for me, that's what's been occupying my time, looking at different polls and getting ready for finally having this over.
Does
it go back to watching stuff about physics and philosophy more than just politics? But
yeah, true. I mean, does this? I'm assuming that. I mean, like, I have put my head in the sand because no new information that's affecting me positively, for many weeks has come to light. I have really appreciated hearing some of the stuff that's going on that you brought up, Devon, because I like to live in a place where you're at the behest of what did this guy say now, and what is like, I've been there for 8 years. I'm good.
Well, and I've said it a few times. I was going to do the same thing for this election when it was Biden-Trump, because Biden didn't excite me. I was going to vote for him because I don't like Trump, but I didn't want to do the day-to-day thing because it was going to be that. But with having someone younger and a bit more exciting, with plenty of flaws as a candidate, but I think she's objectively a good person. And I think that certainly when compared to Trump, she
can speak coherently. That should be should be one of the something that people should have.
That kind of turned back on my political infatuation that I've had forever. I mean, that's why I studied political science in undergrad. But
very true. Yeah.
So yeah, and especially closer and closer to the election, it's like minute to minute there's news that comes out. Last night was a huge thing that was kind of interesting because the polls are, as everyone has said, you can really, everything averages out to a 50-50 chance. You can go into particulars about which state is where and the polls in a particular state, but it really, surprisingly and possibly inaccurately or manufactured, to 50% depending on if there's chance that the pollsters are actually trying to make their polls not have such a wide range. But anyway, there's a poll that came out yesterday that said that Harris is actually up 3 points in Iowa, which is a historically red state, especially for Trump, who won at the last two elections and has not been looked at all as a swing state. It's just assumed it's going to be red. And this poll is a very reputable poll. And if you look at the history of this poll, it's been accurate. So for like the last 10 years on different elections through Iowa for national polls and gubernatorial and Senate races. And so that's a sign of like, wow, if this poll's accurate and she does win Iowa, it's big if.
Yeah.
That would be huge and would probably also mean that throughout the rest of the swing states, there is something that's not being picked up to say that she has a bigger lead or a lead than we've assumed through the numbers we've been monitoring. So but again, it's one data point, and even though they've been correct in the past, there's a chance this is the one time they're not correct. But that's the kind of thing where it's like constantly there's little news stories like that where you're like, oh, well, this one poll is an outlier, but is it accurate or is it completely false? And what's the model they're basing how they weight different things on? And so finally, by Tuesday, this will all be over, hopefully, or a couple days after Tuesday, and I can forget about it all, hopefully with the correct outcome. But there's no guarantee. I've also been like, okay, I'm used to, in my head, I'm like, okay, whenever I think of Donald Trump, I just think, okay, he's gonna be the next president. I'm used to that. I'm just gonna normalize that in my head because that's awesome. That's a real possibility.
Like one way that you can also look at this, and I like it's all a shift in perspective, right? Right now, as we are tremendously concerned about who the leader of our nation is going to be. Right now, there are people going through war in Gaza and in Ukraine that have so many more concerns about where they're going to be eating and what's going to be happening to them and whether or not the sky is going to be falling down on them at any moment. Sure, and so like if you, dear listener, if you are concerned about where this nation is going, yeah, you should be, for sure. Like that's not, but at the same time that you can have hope that even if things don't turn out the way that you desperately hope it does, that there are people that have a lot less than what we do.
But the thing about that is this is something that affects that. True. The leader of the United States is kind of the de facto leader of the world.
Yeah, true.
And we have a lot to do with what happens in Gaza. And that's actually, that's a whole nother aspect of this race that she could lose because people on the far left will vote for a third party because she hasn't come out strongly enough against Israel. And so, which then, unfortunately means Trump would be president, who is going to be a lot more pro-Israel than Harris would be, which is why, a lot of people on the left, I've seen plenty of people make the pitch. They're like, look, I want, and this isn't me talking, this is other people, but saying, I want Israel, I want there to be a ceasefire, I want Israel to be rebuked strongly by the United States, but you can't have a protest vote against the Democrats by voting for a third party and then let someone on the way, way, way far away from your perspective win. What do you think Trump's going to do?
Right.
So it's just like you have to, especially in this case, you kind of just have to, bite your tongue and vote for Harris to have some, positive support for Palestine, depending on your perspective of that. But it's the far left. If she loses because she loses the far left of her base because of this one issue, really, that's what Trump's going to win. And it's ridiculous. So don't throw your vote away by voting for a third party, especially not this time.
Right.
Even that's the other thing. Sorry. The other thing about the Iowa poll, people in safe states safe red or safe blue. You don't know actually how safe that is, because maybe there is something that's not being picked up by the polls, or maybe states that are far left and far right aren't even being polled because it's a waste of money because we already know what the outcome is going to be. So you don't know if your state, how actually safe your state is for either party. So don't protest vote even in a strong blue or red state. Like, vote for Trump or Harris. And also, we haven't gotten to the Senate or the House and how important that is, those races.
True.
But anyway, that's hopefully my last rant about the election.
About this particular one, but
this particular election. And I mean, we'll definitely maybe talk about the results, because when we record next time, we will know for sure, unless something super crazy happens. There's also the chance of a tie, which would have a really insane process to resolve the tie. But
well, no matter what happens, Trump's going to say he won. And issues. So
but it doesn't matter
like
what he says.
I mean,
I
remember January 6th.
Yes.
It kind of matters what he says.
No, it matters what he says in that context, but I'm saying it's not like if he declares victory that he gets to then be president. It's still going to come down to the votes and the certification of the votes and the legal process, if those are challenged, and the electoral vote, the electoral college vote, and then the eventual certification, which is what they were trying to prevent on January 6th. He's going to say he won no matter what. Even people on both sides know that. But that doesn't determine the actual result. What he says doesn't determine the result.
Indeed.
There will be interesting things happening either way. There's going to be court challenges and plenty of other interesting stuff. So we'll just see. But the first thing to do is just have a vote, have it completed, and we know objectively who the winner is. And I believe that regardless of him trying to overturn the election like he did in 2020, we still have plenty of strong institutions who are going to certify the correct outcome. And that might, again, be for him. So voting is what matters. So do that.
Yeah. Democracy.
Have you guys early voted yet, or?
Not yet. Look.
No, not yet.
The preceding...
Are you going to go in person and vote?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we voted in person the first day it was open, which was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Right on.
Well done. The preceding talk may be edited down for length and content, depending on who wins the election. Okay, let's continue.
All hail.
Yeah.
Trump.
Glorious leader.
Our new orange overlord.
Oh, Christ. All right. I don't even know where to go from here now.
Hey, we can skip mine.
Yeah, I want to talk about, look, we all know fascism is bad. But one thing that's good about it is that then we get to fight against it. I recently reread Red Rising.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
just the first book or all of them?
No, the first book. I'm planning on doing a reread of all of them because the latest book I haven't read yet, and it's been so long that I kind of forgot what's happening. So after finishing Dungeon Crawler Carl, I was like, all right, I wanted to go back into Red Rising, but I was like, I gotta reread those 5 books because otherwise I'll just be like, I don't even know what's going on. So reread Red Rising, and man, that's a fun book. There is it takes a while to get going. I was looking at, because I was listening to it, because that's what I have to do now. Thanks, Devon. So I was listening to it, and it takes about 2 hours before anything really happens, and I think it's about 6 hours in until it gets to the Institute. And that's nearly half the book. And then that to me is like when the book actually starts. So what is Red Rising? I'm glad you asked. It's a book. What's the guy's name?
Pierce Brown.
Pierce Brown. It's set in a world. First of all, if you want to go in blind, please do, because it's a wonderful surprise. but it's a world where there is the society, and it's an incredibly fascist organization against the evils of democracy, where the genetically modified superior golds rule everything, and everyone is segmented into colors depending on what you do, all the way down to the reds, which are the dregs of society and do mining and are lied to and manipulated because they're just dumb reds. Well, the name of the book is called Red Rising. There is a growing revolution, and they get a red and they modify him to look like a gold to infiltrate the society and do stuff. The first step of which in Red Rising is a young gold has to go to the Institute. Doesn't have to, but they can choose to go to the Institute to attempt to become a peerless Scard, the best of the golds. And the Institute itself is a school. And when I say school, I mean they take all the kids and put them in a vast valley with castles and say, figure it out. One of you is going to win. And it gets very
Hunger Games-ish. That first book, yeah. That's the weird thing, because the setup and the story of the first book has a very like young adult feel, because it seems like the Hunger Games, but it's not. Like the whole series is definitely for adults. It's bloody, yes. and then also after this first book, the story expands to all the politics and everything else.
Yeah. That first
it's not like the Hunger Games where you just keep doing the Hunger Games.
Yeah, no, it goes forth, and from what I remember from the previous books, is that every book, the world for the reader is expanded larger and larger. So yeah, you have to start very small, and this book starts in a cave essentially, and by the time you get to the fifth book where I was, it's solar system. It spans the solar system. Very good books. I love myself a good revolution. So yeah, I plan on reading more of those. After reading that, I found that I had no credits for Audible, and went searching around and found Fallen Dragon by Peter F. Hamilton, I believe. And so I started listening to that, and it should have been a clue that it was free. I don't know. I'm iffy on it still.
I read his. There was a trilogy, and now I can't even remember what the name of the trilogy is.
That's how
weird, but it was really well written. I talked about it some when I read it. This was like 10 years ago. But I also tried to read some of his other books, and they're just too long. Like he has some really good ideas and writes really well, but it's just like, I think you need an editor. Like get the story popping a bit more.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about Red Rising. It's an easy read. It just flows really well. This Fallen Dragon, man, he gets like right up first chapter. The acronyms and the world building is just crunchy. It is crunchy to follow what is happening, and then after, because it's like, oh, it's this paramilitary sci-fi world and organizations and like explaining how the tech works and like all this stuff right up front, and I'm just, my head is spinning trying to understand all this stuff, and then it's like chapter 2, here's some kids on another planet, and their nanny is telling them a story about aliens, and I was like, oh, this is actually really good now. So like I'm not sure where this story is going or what's really happening with it, but I'm gonna keep checking it out.
So I read the Night's Dawn trilogy, which is funny because I don't remember that being the name of the trilogy, but I'm looking at the books in it, and I definitely remember the name of the books: Reality Dysfunction, Neutronium Alchemist, and Naked God. But man, it says world building is just crazy. Like everything is so detailed and well thought out.
It is. It's just the way that he explains it if you're not paying exactly 100% attention, you're going to lose something and get lost. That's how I feel about it, at least. The other thing I'm reading in a physical form, using my hands like a baby's toy, second reference this episode if you're keeping track, is Annihilation. which is, if you remember, the Natalie Portman-led sci-fi movie that was panned a bit, I think. I don't think it was that it did that well.
I think it got well. I don't think it did well, but I think it got okay reviews.
Yeah, it was well reviewed. It just Did you
see the movie?
What?
It was a fun movie.
I know you're reading the book, but did you see the movie?
Yes, I saw the movie.
Okay.
And I enjoyed the movie. Mm-hmm. And everything, like it's a trilogy of books, and everyone says, yeah, the first book is like the movie, sort of. And the other two books are insanely different and are not recommended by various sources. Like a lot of people say, the first one's good. After that, it gets like too weird, too bizarre. And I'm reading this first one, and it is weird the way that it's written. Like none of the characters have names, and which I believe that's how. I don't remember exactly if that's how the movie was, but it while the concept is the same. 4 women going into a strange area to investigate. That's kind of where it ends. It's a psychological type book, and you can't really do that in a movie. So the movie showed more, whereas the book is like, I think it's supposed to be a recovered journal from one of the women. That's how it's written. So it's different, but it's interesting so far. I'm like, and it's a shorter book. I think it's like maybe 250 pages, something like that. I don't have it with me right here, but it's I'm like a quarter of the way through, and it's interesting. It gets into the headspace of what's happening, and it's weird. The last thing I just want to mention, Agatha All Along had its finale on Halloween, fitting for a show about witches. And I think I texted Ben, because I know, Ben, you were kind of on the fence on it a little bit after a couple of episodes. The whole series is 9 episodes long, and after 8 episodes, the story's over, and then the 9th episode starts.
Oh, geez.
which is very interesting. There are in that 8th episode, there are quite a few reveals. One pretty big twist right there at the end that then leads into the 9th episode. So you think everything's done, and then it was Agatha all along. And not really, but and really, I think the show was misnamed. I don't think they could have named it anything else. I know one of the names that they had, within the marketing of the show, they put out a bunch of different potential names for the show, and one of them was The Witch's Road, which I think would be perfect for the show, to call it The Witch's Road. But that didn't have any name recognition or anything to do with any other Marvel property. So using her name and that big reveal from WandaVision made sense from an advertising perspective. But the show should have been called The Witch's Road, because that's really what it's about. Anyways, it was good. I think it was better than good. That was a darn good show. Very well written. It's good. And I 5 stars. I really liked that show. It was good. So anyways, let's move along. We've been doing this for an hour already. I mean, some of that might be cut out, or at least moved, so that our patron listeners can hear it. Maybe I'll leave it all in. I don't know yet. But right now, we're going to take ourselves a little break. And when we come back, we are going to be discussing Isaac Asimov's Nightfall, the 1968 written before America, 1941 short story. Sorry, the 1941 short story. So we're going to talk about that. So we'll be right back.
Go to patreon.com/sciencefactionpodcast and join the threes of people who have already donated.
And we're back.
Heyo.
Hey.
Yo.
And a big thank you to our patrons. That's Renee, Josh, and Johnny. Thanks for keeping the lights on for us.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. And once again, our Discord is open. Go to Patreon, join as a free member, and the link's pinned at the top. Check us out. We talk nonsense. I post memes, images, all kinds of fun stuff. But let's move on to our book club. Ben, tell us, what are we reading next week?
Next week, we are going to be reading The Crowd by Ray Bradbury. I know very, very little about it, actually, other than it's Ray Bradbury, and that the YouTube video I found for it is only 18 minutes long. So, yeah. But
That's super doable.
Right?
Yeah.
I love Ray Bradbury's work, or at least I did growing up. So I'm kind of excited to kind of come back to some of Ray Bradbury's work as an adult. I think pretty soon, I think I should probably read some more Arthur C. Clarke too, because I was very much into him.
Arthur C. Is he the 2001 guy?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
he also filed the patent for satellites in space.
Oh, it's his fault. Cool.
Well, yeah. The ability for us to have communication worldwide in the blink of an eye. Yeah, that would be his fault.
What we're doing right now and what our listeners are listening to, because of that, it's his fault.
Yeah, exactly. You're welcome, says Arthur C. Clarke. If he would, or he would, from wherever he is. He passed a while back, but. Yeah, but it's about Ray Bradbury, the 1943 short story The Crowd, that was originally published in his short story collection, or that has been published in his short story collection, The October Country.
Cool.
Enjoy. But
So
this week,
we got to enjoy Isaac Asimov's Nightfall, the 1941 short story written while Asimov was still only in his early 20s. It's widely regarded as one of the greatest science fiction short stories of all time. I think we have something to say about that. Indeed, in 1968, the Science Fiction Writers of America voted the best science fiction short story written before 1965. As we all know, 1965, that's the date where things change. I don't know. So let's talk about this. Nightfall, we do have a link maybe to YouTube where someone reads it to you, and it was like an hour and a half, I think.
Yeah, about an hour and 18 is how long it took.
Hour 18.
Yeah. Or like 5 seconds if you're listening to it at Devon speed.
Yeah, Devon speed is insane. He goes plaid when he listens. It's amazing.
The speed of lint.
The speed of lint. So you guys read it then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I listened to it this time. I didn't read it.
Well, tell us, how was your journey, Ben?
Well, okay, so I mean, should we go through like what it's about?
Yeah, tell us about it.
So this story is all about this planet that doesn't experience nightfall because there are 6 suns that orbit it. It's normally lit by 6 suns, but once every 2,050 years or so, there is a point where the civilization only sees one star named Beta, and that star has a solar eclipse from another planet that they didn't necessarily know about. And so, since every human being alive finds nightfall a terrifying experience, when this, there are these scientists that worry about the chaos that's going to ensue when night falls. This species, when they experience nightfall or darkness at all, like going into a cave, they
freak
find
out,
themselves
man.
tremendously agitated and anxious and search for any source of light that they can find, often destroying the society in order to create giant plumes of fire that can light up their existence. And this happens every 2,050 years or so, and civilization collapses in this half hour of darkness, and then comes back. And this is the story here follows scientists who have discovered this going to happen, cult leaders that have religious texts that say it's going to happen, and then journalists that don't believe it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, so Isaac Asimov, this and Foundation, he just loves to write about scientists sitting in a room talking. Which I mean, this story to me, it was very interesting. It took a bit to get going, but then once it did, I was like, all right, let's see what happens here. But it is another story of people sitting around a room chatting, and then they drink a little, and then they talk some more, and then the end of the world comes. Devon, what was your perspective on this whole thing? What did you think about the story?
First, it reminded me of the three-body problem with multiple suns and having kind of a inconsistent way of tracking life or how the world works. But it's interesting that it's always daytime. I thought it was like, are their buildings just have tons of windows? Like, because they're, like you said, they're basically afraid of the dark. So it's not like they sleep in darkness, but they're humans. So there's no explanation of why humans live on this planet. I'm assuming it's the kind of thing where humans colonized this planet thousands of years ago, and we've just, because of the periodic destruction of civilization.
Devon, you're thinking too much.
Well, no, but the problem is, like, we're saying how silly it is for humans to be afraid of the dark because we evolved in a day-night cycle. So if these are people who are so far removed from us as humans, like, but they're still humans. So I guess you're right. This is kind of like, it's from the 40s, so sci-fi, or any, I guess, just as a short story, you don't need to address this exactly. You just want the people to be in the situation and not really need to explain in detail how they got in the situation. But my point is, the evolution of humans, we did evolve to be okay with darkness. I mean, I'm assuming they sleep, which means they close their eyes, and that's darkness. And I did think it was funny how they were talking about theoretically a one sun, one planet system with a day-night cycle and how crazy that would be. And like, oh, life couldn't evolve in that system because it'd be in dark half the time.
Right.
Which I think that was specifically put in the story, not only because that's cool to think about, but the typical reader of the story might be like, well, how could these people possibly live with all these suns? That's an impossibility. And it's like, yeah, if you're not in it, you think it's impossible.
Yeah.
And also, if their society crumbles every 2,000 years or so, then all knowledge of how, if this was from a spacefaring race and they've been there for, 10,000 years slowly evolving, they would have no idea.
Right.
It's a long time, but somebody has to survive. Some humans have to survive in order to restart civilization. Those humans would have some knowledge. I mean, the ones that literally survive have knowledge of their previous civilization. There's evidence of the previous civilization archaeologically. Mm-hmm. I just feel like you wouldn't have a complete reset each time.
Well, no, the ones that restart civilization, so to speak, become the next cultists. That then, as time goes on, everyone goes, "You're nuts. What do you mean there's going to be darkness?" And for, then 2,000 years go along and the cultists are like, hey, we've been telling you this whole time. Yeah. And since they're the ones prepping, they're the ones that survive, and then they restart, and then they become the crazies again.
Yeah.
It's a very well thought out cycle as far as the story goes. I
like how no one's ever seen the stars, and so they have no way of really doing astronomy. So we've heard about maybe stars, maybe there's a few of them in the sky, and then when it happens, there's a whole star field.
I think it's go ahead.
The fact that it is the insignificance of the entire planet that drives the population insane.
Mm-hmm.
We are nothing.
Yeah, like that really brought it together at the end.
I liked how the scientists were like, now with your telescopes, don't bother trying to get two stars in a picture, in a frame. If you get one, just take the picture quick. Mm-hmm. And then when the eclipse happens, there's billions of stars and they all just go nuts. I love it.
But yeah, like it to me, it felt so fascinating because we're living in an age where we're constantly being told that we're at the end of something, of things that we really care about, the end of society as we know it, the end of, like, and in different ways, even especially in the last 5 years, that has all been true and false, right? Like, we're going through a current election cycle with United States politics. We're going that where the stakes could not be higher, as is being told to us every chance we get.
By Devon specifically, but go ahead.
Well, no, not just Devon, right? But like,
yeah,
whether it is true or not, it is something that at least is a feeling that we are being bombarded, and we are choosing to accept or not. But like, also, there was a time when being in California during during lockdown, when COVID-19 was flaring up, and we were told stay inside and keep to yourself for just 3 weeks, and if everybody does this, we'll wipe this out. And a bunch of people didn't do it because they thought it was nonsense. And now we still deal with the reality of living, continuing to live in a society that is shaped by what happened during that time. Which, like, in California, being where we've been, we didn't just deal with the lockdown. We also dealt with the fires going across the state, and the outside air being full of ash at the same time that we're being told to stay inside and not talk to anybody. And then also at the same time, we were dealing with the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement, where we were seeing the dismantling of these systems in place that we put a lot of faith in. And like, I can't help but look at this society that's in this story and not see a reflection of our own, even 70, 80 years removed from the fact.
Yeah, it's interesting the way those who do not put stock into science make everyone suffer.
But this particular story flips it on its head, right? Because it's the scientists that are the deniers of it, but are coming around to it, that are being, it's the people who know for certain that this apocalypse is going to come, that are the cultists.
Yeah.
Right. But like, at the end of it, it is an apocalyptic thing that happens to their society. However ridiculous it is or is not, the society can't handle it.
Yeah.
The psychology of this is something that could not be fully accounted for by the cultists, nor the scientists, nor the journalists, that everybody was wrong in a particular way and everybody's right in a particular way. And yeah.
So what did you think, man? Is it a good story? Is it a bad story?
I think that Isaac Asimov has a lot of problems writing characters. Writing believable, fleshed out characters.
Oh, you mean all the scientists that say, "Oh, only the please." I am quoting the story here. The retards would be okay with darkness because of their weak minds. Like,
yeah, that didn't
age well.
Sure.
No, but the sentiment might be accurate. That those that think differently or otherly may be more accepting when there is change.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, I think that just in general, the characterizations, I don't think, like, don't come to an Isaac Asimov story for good characters. You come to it for good world building and for a fascinating science fiction concept that, and so for the world building and the sci-fi concept, like, I'm in. This is great. For the characters that bring you there, they're one note. And I
don't think I've ever read an Isaac Asimov story or book, so this is my first time exposed to that. I mean, I've obviously seen plenty of movies and TV shows based on his work, but...
Well, okay, Devon, what did you think about all the scientists talking in a room? What did you think about the story?
Well, like structure wise, like telling a story wise.
Yeah, that's part of it.
I mean, at first it was kind of slow, but I did like, I mean, it was mostly exposition at some point where the one guy was just telling the reporter, like, you know, here's what we think's happening. And that was interesting. But then it's like, well, could the story have just been told more as a history without characters or without, you know, first person dialogue or anything, just saying this is what happened. I don't know. I wasn't really judging it on that level. I was kind of just getting the story.
Okay,
Yeah,
so then as the story goes, what do you think about the sci-fi-ness of it?
I liked it. I thought it was an interesting concept, and I thought it unfolded pretty well. Yeah, I don't know. I just
Okay.
liked it.
All right.
I think
Fair
that
enough.
a large part of my discussion about the characterizations is also informed by having read The End of Eternity by Isaac Asimov, which is another story. It's a novel. It's 192 pages. That came out in 1971. That's about a man who his name's Andrew, and he's an Eternal, and his job is to go to different centuries, which he can access through this elevator. That and he puts like time on the right tracks, but he ends up meeting and falling for and this is across like thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. He's adjusting time in order to maintain the true path. He meets and falls for a non-eternal woman and decides to buck the system and use his awesome powers to twist time for his own purposes to keep her happy, so that he and his love can survive together past a particular apocalyptic event that is supposed to happen. And that's
so like
another
Loki season 1?
pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Another great story, but the characters are just not like it's the story that's exciting about it, not necessarily the characters that bring you there.
One-dimensional characters, but an exceptional world building.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's how I felt about Foundation as well. When reading the first book, or part of the first. I didn't even finish the first book. So boring. I mean, I
haven't tried it yet.
It's just people talking. That's all. And then some time passes and more people talk, and they're boring. But what they're talking about is interesting, but the people are boring. It's the whole thing. All right. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the story. Putting aside the dated parts, the 1941 parts of it, taking those bits out, I actually didn't mind the way the story was told. And while yes, the characters were pretty one note, when it comes to a short story, that doesn't bother me as much, because you don't have the time to dive into everyone's past and everything. And there were enough different points of view on what reality was, the scientist, the reporter, the cultist, that there was interesting back and forth between the characters, and it was. I liked it. I thought it was cool. It was a cool concept, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's fun.
Right on.
It was fun and interesting for what it was, which is a short story written in 1941.
Yeah.
So there you go.
If you're interested in this story expanded into a novel length story by Robert Silverberg with Isaac Asimov's blessing, Nightfall the novel came out in 1990. And
okay.
Yeah, that's essentially this story expanded into a full thing. Many people don't think it's as good as the short story, but some do.
That reminds me of Stephen Baxter and the Time Ships. Do you remember that, Devon?
Yeah.
That takes the time machine and right, H.G. Wells' The Time Machine.
Yeah, it's a sequel to The Time
sequel,
Machine.
and it's like an official sequel. There are a lot of unofficial sequels, but I think this one, was blessed by the H.G. Wells estate as being the true sequel. Very, very interesting. Yeah, sometimes you got to take a classic short story and expand upon it. See what happens. Okay, gentlemen, with that, I think it's time for our own personal eclipse and to go insane. So let's end this episode. As always, there will be links in our show notes to the things that we have talked about, links to YouTube and links to Goodreads and whatnot. High stakes. Don't forget, play some card games in Vegas. Earn your blood back. It's good stuff. Good stuff. Devon, do you have any last words?
Nope.
Not, okay. Ben, I was about to say something. I've said this before, and I'm not going to say it again. Ben, do you have any last words?
Everybody's always complaining about jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, but not being able to jump out of bad ones, that is terrifying.
Good night, everybody.
This has been the Science Faction Podcast. Tweet to the host at SciFact Podcast. Email them at sciencefactionpodcast@gmail.com and visit sciencefactionpodcast.com for more episodes.